お前、やっぱ惹かれちゃうやろ。
お前のこと大好きやね。お前を殺した。
The Summer Hikaru Died isn't just queer-coded, it's plainly gay. It's really gay, but I want to talk about why. What makes this story go beyond just subtext or allegory and actually cross the line into full-on queer narrative, while also using metaphor and analogy in really smart ways. My name is Yugen, and this is a little essay I made about The Summer Hikaru Died. To start with some context, the story revolves around two boys, Yoshiki and Hikaru, who are childhood friends. Early in the manga, they are sitting together, eating ice cream, seemingly like any other summer day, but suddenly we are hit with this surreal twist. Yoshiki realizes that the Hikaru sitting next to him isn't really Hikaru, he's someone else. Some kind of creature or entity that took Hikaru's form after he died. Later in the novel, the pronouns of Hikaru are changed from he, him to it, its, because that's the way that Yoshiki deals with the situation. He no longer believes that the Hikaru that he's talking with is actually Hikaru. He only believes that he's some sort of monster. The opening of the story is very abrupt, but incredibly effective. What really grabbed me though was how this new Hikaru, this not Hikaru, originally wanted to kill Yoshiki but ends up not doing so because in his word he likes him. And this moment is crucial because from the beginning the story sets up a tension between something monstrous and something deeply intimate. I won't lie, when I read this part I thought that mainly Hikaru was probably manipulating Yoshiki because it's very obvious that Yoshiki harbors some kind of romantic feelings towards Hikaru, so in a way I will find it very logical that in a way for Hikaru to keep on living, he might want to abuse that sort of dynamic and try to make Yoshiki like him or think that he also likes him back so that he lets him live. However, we're told that the original Hikaru and Yoshiki had a close platonic friendship that might have made this not as necessary for Hikaru as one originally might have thought, but as the story develops, it becomes more and more clear that Yoshiki's feelings weren't just friendly. He was in love with Hikaru, and even though the original Hikaru didn't reciprocate in that way, he loved Yoshiki, but only as a friend. It adds this incredibly heavy one-sided emotional weight that's hard to shake because it makes us realize that this is all a one-sided thing. It's something that is painful, that has been slow, and that Yoshiki doesn't even know how to talk with Hikaru about it when he was alive because he had a fear that things will change if that happened. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Even after learning that this creature is not his real friend, Yoshiki still chooses to treat him like Hikaru, not because he's full, but because he needs to. It becomes a coping mechanism. He uses his imitation of Hikaru to process his grief, his loss, and the love he never got to fully express. It's a way for him to try to rationalize everything that he's been thinking about. Other characters start showing up, childhood friends like Asako and Yuki, Yoshiki's sister, and a guy named Yuta, but none of them really break into the emotional bubble between Yoshiki and Monster Hikaru. Their interactions keep reinforcing how singular that relationship is. One scene that always stays in my mind is when Hikaru tells Yoshiki to put his hand inside his body. Okay, I will lie, when I started reading that I thought, because they don't straight up tell you that what he's going to do is more about some supernatural thing. They leave it kind of ambiguous, so I was a little bit afraid of what actually was the idea of the author or the mangaka at putting all of this. Luckily, even though it sounds creepy and yeah, it kind of took me off guard, Hikaru's body is no longer human, it's kind of like a vessel, and when Yoshiki reaches in, he describes this as feeling like raw chicken and sauce. But the way the scene is framed has connotations of intimacy, even pleasure, and that's totally not accidental. Later, in an extra chapter, Hikaru clarifies that he didn't feel anything sexual from the experience because he doesn't actually understand human intimacy. In his mind, sex is just a means of reproduction. He even compares it to the way that some chicken might have children and then the children look like adult chickens or something like that. He sees humans as creatures who eat, sleep, and have sex on repeat. That's it. But Yoshiki, being human, knows there is more to it. He knows love exists outside of physical instinct. He knows he was in love with the real Hikaru, and that he's started to change his feelings about how he sees this monster Hikaru. There's even a flashback where Yoshiki thinks about getting a girlfriend, and instead of saying he doesn't want one, he says he can't get one. That distinction is important. He's not shy, he's not picky, he's just not straight. It's subtle, but it's there. Then there is a moment when a girl flirts with Yoshiki and he brushes it off entirely. He's just not into it. Hikaru didn't see that as anything important. And I'm talking about the real Hikaru here. When those sort of things happen, the real Hikaru was often like bugging Yoshiki about it and just like being friendly. But the monster Hikaru actually cares about that. He becomes possessive of Yoshiki in a way the original never was. At some point, a housewife named Rie shows up, and she had brought her own dead husband's spirit back into her life, or that is established at some point of her life. We are brought back to the idea that these two characters are not alone in the world. They have other people who actually care about them, and she is actually very concerned about how the relationship between Hikaru and Yoshiki is developing, because she gets reminded of the way that she treated her late husband's spirit when he came back home. She assumes at first that Hikaru and Yoshiki are lovers, because she literally tells Yoshiki that she thought Hikaru was his girlfriend based on how he talked about him, and Yoshiki doesn't correct her with, no, we're just friends. He just kind of sidesteps it. Obviously, that kind of makes us realize how Yoshiki is not unaware of the way that the relationship might be perceived by other people, but he really doesn't want to delve too deeply into this. For me, one of the most heartbreaking parts of the story is how Hikaru, the creature, starts to genuinely want to be someone for Yoshiki. At first, I thought he just wanted to replace the original Hikaru, but then he starts to develop his own identity. He's not trying to be a perfect copy anymore. He doesn't like the same things. He prefers ice cream over watermelon, he likes movies, he enjoys studying, he even says clearly, I love Yoshiki. And that's where it all clicked for me. The story isn't just about grief or horror or identity. It's about this evolving relationship that isn't defined by traditional categories. It's not exactly romantic love, not in the way we typically think of it, but it's not platonic either. The creature may not be capable of love as humans define it, but he's trying, he's learning love through Yoshiki. And even after everything, the loss, the deception, the danger, Yoshiki accepts this new Hikaru. I once saw in one of the comments of this manga that we as humans often see things that we might not be able to understand, but still try to bring them home back to us and try to be able to cure them because we find them adorable. It's the same way that sometimes we allow children to have these very savage thoughts because we know that they don't know any better. And at some point in the story, Yoshiki started to feel like Hikaru was similar to this, that he was just a child that couldn't comprehend correctly how the world worked. And I feel that this is why Hikaru started to see Yoshiki as something more too, because he started to see how Yoshiki genuinely cared for him, not as a replacement, not as a monster, but as someone he loves, not in spite of who he is, but because of who he is. And that's when the relationship shifts into something that it's unmistakably queer. So yeah, to answer this question, the story isn't just queer-coded, it's queer, it's messy and painful and tender and raw, but it's queer, and in that mess, it finds something beautiful. Before I wrap this up, I want to add something really close to my heart, something I didn't get to say earlier because I was kind of just brushing my ideas and trying to put them into with my voice and everything. And it's that I have always loved literature, especially horror literature, and one of the reasons I love horror so much is because of how deeply it's tied to queer experiences. So many classic horror stories have used monsters as metaphors for queerness, sometimes deliberatively, sometimes unintentionally, but they are there, haunting the margins. And just please think about Dracula. Beneath all the blood and gothic atmosphere, there is this strong undercurrent of a desire that's fear forbidden but also magnetic. The way Dracula invades private spaces, the way he controls and seduces, it's not just horror for horror's sake. It reflects this Victorian fear of otherness, and that otherness often includes queerness. Some scholars even suggest that Bram Stoker himself might have been grappling with repressed homosexual feelings, and Dracula became a vessel for expressing all of that confusion and attraction through horror. And even though I have seen a lot of debate about how Dracula is more about just intimacy and sexual desires, and that's just not what queer is about. It's not just to satisfy your needs, it's more about an experience, a way of living, feeling that you feel very close to your chest. But however, I find this very important too. And even earlier than that novel was published, we have another novella that I think that it's also very queer and was based off Dracula actually. Or, well, more correctly, Dracula was based off this novel. And that novel is Carmilla by Sheridan Le Fanu, a novella that predicts Dracula and features an explicitly sapphic relationship. The central vampire, Carmilla, is a woman who desires another woman, and while the narrative frames it as something terrifying, there is also something tragically beautiful about it. There is this quote from the protagonist, Laura, that really stuck with me, and she says, "I experienced a strange tumultuous excitement that was pleasurable ever and anon, mingled with a vague sense of fear and disgust." And this brought me back to that scene where Yoshiki has a hand inside of Hikaru and he's like, "I don't like this, I hate this, I love this is gross, this is pleasurable," and he's having all of those thoughts because he can actually understand how something that he should be grossed by, something that he should hate, actually makes him feel so good about himself. That moment hits hard because it captures what so many queer people growing up in environments where their desires are seen as wrong. It's not just, "I'm scared of this monster," it's, "I'm scared of what I feel because the world tells me it's monstrous." And that duality, fear and desire intertwined, is something that shows up in the Summer Hikaru Died, too. The creature that takes Hikaru's place is literally monstrous, but the emotions he and Yoshiki navigate together are painfully human. It becomes another story where queerness is wrapped in horror, not as a curse, but as something misunderstood and aching to be seen. Monsters in literature have always been used to express queerness when queerness couldn't be talked about openly. From Frankenstein encouraged being rejected by his creator and desperate for companionship, to Jekyll and Hyde's dual identities. It's all there: fear, repression, transformation. But what I love about the Summer Hikaru Died is that it doesn't stop at metaphors. It gives us queerness and monstrosity and lets them exist together without apology. And that's all. I hope you like my little brain rot, I don't know how to call this, but yeah. If you have an opportunity to read the Summer Hikaru Died, please do it. It's a very good manga. It's not finished yet, but I feel like probably it will be. And there is also the anime going out in July 5th, if I remember correctly. So that's all.